In a bustling electronics store, suspicion clouds the judgment of a wary shop owner as he eyes a casually dressed customer. What unfolds next challenges the very foundations of his beliefs and shakes up the community. Can assumptions ever lead to anything but trouble? Tom Reynolds paced the polished floors of his high-end electronics store, located in the heart of a bustling urban area. With sleek gadgets lining pristine display cases and the latest technology at every turn, the store was a haven for tech enthusiasts. However, beneath the surface of this modern retail paradise lurked a troubling undercurrent. Tom, the store owner, had developed a habit of eyeing his black customers with suspicion, a prejudice rooted deep within him that often led him to assume they were potential shoplifters. Despite numerous instances where his assumptions proved baseless, his biased behavior went unchecked, shielded by his ownership status. On this particular day, the store was abuzz with a diverse group of customers, reflecting the vibrant life of the city outside. Tom had implemented several subtle security measures, which, though outwardly innocuous, were specifically designed to deter what he perceived as potential thefts. These measures were particularly focused on black shoppers, whom he watched more diligently than others, a fact that had slowly instilled an unwelcoming atmosphere. Amidst the usual crowd, Michael Johnson entered the store. Dressed in casual attire, Michael's presence was unassuming, yet composed. Unknown to Tom and the other shoppers, Michael was a decorated police officer, a hero who had recently been in the news for a commendable act that saved a family from a devastating house fire. Today, he was not in uniform but was on a personal mission to purchase a new laptop to replace one damaged in the line of duty. His gaze was keen as he scanned the array of high-tech equipment, his mind focused on specs and performance, oblivious to the wary eyes that followed him from behind the counter. Michael Johnson moved through the rows of high-end laptops, his eyes scanning the latest models displayed under the gleaming store lights. He was drawn to a particularly powerful laptop, ideal for the heavy multitasking his police work often demanded. As he leaned in closer to read the specs label beside the laptop, his focus was complete, his fingers tracing the sleek edges of the device. From behind the counter, Tom Reynolds watched Michael intently. The shop owner's suspicions began to simmer as he noticed Michael's keen interest in the most expensive items. Dressed in plain clothes that didn't hint at his profession, Michael didn't fit the profile of the typical high spender in Tom's prejudiced eyes. Instead of seeing a potential customer, Tom saw a potential thief. Convinced he needed to intervene, Tom approached Michael under the pretense of offering assistance. "Looking for something in particular?" Tom asked, his voice dripping with a feigned politeness that thinly veiled his suspicion. Michael, noticing the underlying condescension, straightened up and met Tom's gaze with a calm assertiveness. "Yes, I'm interested in buying this model," he said, pointing to the laptop. "I'd like to purchase it outright today." Tom's eyes narrowed slightly, skepticism etched across his face. He continued to hover around Michael, casting doubtful glances at the laptop, then back at Michael. "Are you sure this model is within your budget?" Tom probed, his tone implying disbelief that Michael could afford such an expensive piece of technology. The situation escalated quickly as Tom's ingrained biases overpowered his judgment. Unable to contain his groundless suspicions, he bluntly accused Michael of having ulterior motives. "We've had issues with shoplifting lately," Tom said, his voice hardening. "And I must say, our security footage earlier showed you acting a bit suspiciously around these high-value items." Michael's composure faltered for a moment, taken aback by the blatant accusation. His career had taught him to handle far worse confrontations with grace, but the sting of being unjustly accused, purely based on his appearance, ignited a quiet fire within him. "I assure you I'm here to make a legitimate purchase," Michael replied, his tone firm yet measured. "I would appreciate it if you could treat me as any other customer, without baseless accusations." The air between them charged with tension, as bystanders began to take notice. The atmosphere in the store shifted palpably. What began as a simple shopping trip was quickly turning into a public confrontation, setting the stage for truths to be unveiled and prejudices to be confronted. Michael stood his ground, his voice steady as he addressed Tom. "I would like to see this security footage you mentioned. If you are accusing me of suspicious behavior, I have the right to verify your claims. His request was reasonable, yet it put Tom in a difficult position, as no such footage existed. Tom's baseless suspicions had led him to a confrontation he was ill-prepared to handle truthfully. Flustered and cornered, Tom gestured awkwardly toward the back of the store. I'll have to check with our security team. Please wait here, he said, his voice betraying his uncertainty. Turning abruptly, he walked to the security office, his mind racing for a way out of the mess he had created. Instead of admitting his mistake, Tom decided to escalate the situation, hoping to intimidate Michael into backing down. He instructed the security team to come to the front and handle what he described as a delicate situation. As the security guards arrived, the tension in the store escalated. Customers paused their shopping to watch the unfolding drama, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Michael, feeling the weight of all eyes on him, knew he had to handle the situation with utmost professionalism. Just as Tom returned with the security team, Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out his badge, holding it up for Tom and the guards to see. I am Officer Michael Johnson, he announced, his voice resonant and clear. I am here not to cause trouble, but to make a purchase. Your accusations are not only unfounded, but also damaging. The security team paused, their posture relaxing slightly as they processed the information. Bystanders whispered among themselves, their shock evident. Here was a man, an officer of the law, being accused of theft in a situation where he was the victim of prejudice. Tom, though visibly taken aback by the revelation, clung to his defensive stance. I'm only trying to protect my store, he insisted, his voice rising slightly in desperation. You have to understand, theft is a real issue for businesses like mine. The crowd, now fully engaged, began to murmur their disapproval. It was clear to them that Tom's actions were driven by more than just a concern for security. Michael, recognizing the need to address not just Tom, but the gathered onlookers, turned to face the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael began, his tone calm yet authoritative. What you are witnessing is an unfortunate reality that many face. It is not just about a misunderstanding or a concern for store security. Incidents like these stem from deep-seated biases and can have harmful effects on individuals and communities. They perpetuate stereotypes that lead to discrimination and injustice. As Michael spoke, his words resonated with the onlookers. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked away, uncomfortable with the truth he spoke. Michael continued, As a police officer, I am trained to handle situations based on evidence, not assumptions. Today, I am not only a customer, but also a reminder that we must all challenge our preconceptions and strive for a society where respect and justice are not conditional. Tom listened, the weight of Michael's words making him increasingly uncomfortable. He had expected to exert authority, to control the narrative as he always had within the confines of his store. But now, faced with the reality of his biases and the public scrutiny that came with them, he felt his resolve waver. Meanwhile, some of the onlookers started to speak out, their voices adding to the chorus of support for Michael. He's right, one woman said loudly. We've seen this kind of thing happen too often, and it's not right. Others echoed her sentiment, their words a clear indication of their shifting views on the situation. Tom, realizing the tide was turning against him, felt a growing sense of isolation. His attempt to protect his property had exposed a flaw in his character, a flaw that was now plain for all to see. As Michael finished speaking, the store was filled with a palpable sense of contemplation. People began to reconsider their own biases, inspired by Michael's call for reflection and change. The security guards, understanding the sensitivity of the situation, stepped back, their role reduced to observers as the community took the lead. They too were affected by Michael's words, aware of their responsibility to act justly, influenced not by the color of someone's skin, but by the truth of their actions. As the confrontation drew to a close, the atmosphere in the store began to shift from one of tension to one of understanding. Michael had not only defended his dignity, but had also ignited a conversation that would continue long after he left the store. His presence and the dignity with which he handled the situation had left an indelible mark on those who witnessed it, challenging them to confront their own prejudices and to think critically about how they interact with the world around them. As the tension in the electronics store reached a peak, The gathered crowd's murmurs turned into outright expressions of dismay and disappointment towards Tom Reynolds. The shop owner stood rigid, his earlier confidence melting away under the scrutinizing eyes of his customers and his own employees. They were shocked not just by the accusation itself, but by the clear prejudice that had fueled it. Michael Johnson, standing firm and composed amidst the rising chaos, became a beacon of integrity and professionalism. As bystanders began to vocally support him, praising his calm demeanor and critiquing Tom's blatantly discriminatory behavior, a palpable shift occurred in the room. People pulled out their phones, some recording, others texting friends or posting online about the incident. The story of a decorated officer accused unjustly in a local store began to spread beyond the walls of the establishment. Just then, another layer was added to the unfolding drama. A police car pulled up outside the store, and another officer, Lieutenant Harper, stepped in. He walked briskly toward the crowd, his uniform sharply contrasting with the casual attire of the shoppers. His eyes quickly found Michael, and his stern expression softened into one of respect and camaraderie as he approached. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lieutenant Harper announced, his voice carrying across the store with authority and ease, "I can personally attest to Officer Johnson's character and professionalism. Just last week, he was instrumental in saving a family from a catastrophic fire. He's not just a hero in uniform, he's a pillar of our community." The crowd listened, rapt, as Harper continued to laud Michael's recent acts of bravery and his long-standing service record. The revelation struck a chord with the onlookers, many of whom began to applaud Michael, their claps echoing loudly in the confined space of the store. Tom, now visibly shaken, felt the weight of every word. The room felt unbearably tight as the reality of his baseless accusations crashed down around him. The faces of his staff and customers, many of whom he knew by name, now bore looks of anger and disappointment. It was a gut-wrenching moment, a stark mirror reflecting the flaws he had so long ignored within himself. Swallowing his pride, Tom realized there was only one thing he could do to begin to mend the fissures he had created. He stepped forward, his movements slow, almost reluctant. Standing before Michael and the rest of the crowd, he cleared his throat, his next words crucial not just to his business, but to his personal journey. "Michael, I am profoundly sorry," Tom began, his voice trembling slightly. "My actions today were inexcusable. I let my unfounded fears and prejudices dictate my behavior, and in doing so, I not only wronged you, but I also set a terrible example for my staff and tarnished the reputation of the store." The store was silent now, every ear tuned to Tom's public admission. He continued, his gaze lingering on Michael, who listened intently. "I've learned a harsh but necessary lesson today about the dangers of stereotyping and discrimination. I see now that I need to do a lot of work, not just personally but also here, within my business, to ensure that this never happens again." Tom's apology, while a significant first step, was met with mixed reactions. Some nodded, accepting his willingness to change as genuine, while others remained skeptical, their expressions unreadable. Michael, for his part, maintained his composure, nodding slightly to acknowledge Tom's apology, but keeping his own counsel. "I will be taking immediate steps to address this issue," Tom added, his voice stronger now, determined. "This includes diversity training for myself and my entire team. We will also review our customer service protocols to ensure our store is welcoming to everyone, without prejudice." As Tom concluded, Lieutenant Harper stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Michael's shoulder. "It takes a lot of courage to stand up in a situation like this," Harper said, addressing the crowd. "But it also takes courage to admit when you're wrong. We hope this can be a moment of learning and growth for everyone involved." The atmosphere in the store began to settle as people started to discuss what had happened. The incident would leave a lasting impact, sparking conversations about racism, justice, and the power of community support. For Tom, it was the beginning of a long road to redemption. For Michael, it was another day of upholding his dignity against the odds. As the crowd eventually dispersed, the lessons of the day hung heavily in the air. Tom was left to reflect on the gravity of his mistakes, while Michael, bolstered by the support of his community and colleagues, prepared to continue his duties, his reputation as both an officer and a citizen stronger than ever. In the quiet aftermath of the public apology, Michael Johnson stood with a contemplative expression. He accepted Tom Reynolds' apology, recognizing the significance of such a public admission, yet his response was measured, emphasizing the depth of the issue. Tom, your apology is a start, but real change goes beyond today, beyond just us. It's about reshaping the way we all think and act towards one another, Michael stated, his voice resonant with the weight of his experience as both a police officer and a black man. Tom nodded, the gravity of Michael's words sinking in. It wasn't just about correcting a single misstep. It was about transforming an entire mindset that had allowed such prejudices to fester. Michael's emphasis on systemic change resonated with the bystanders, prompting murmurs of agreement. The incident, a stark display of racial profiling, had sparked a broader conversation within the community about the need for inclusivity and respect. As news of the confrontation and Tom's subsequent apology spread beyond the walls of the electronics store, it ignited a wider response. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a turning point in community relations. Social media buzzed with discussions and debates, many lauding Michael for his dignified handling of the situation, and others expressing disdain for Tom's initial behavior. The incident became a catalyst for a larger dialogue on racial profiling and discrimination in business practices. Community leaders and advocacy groups stepped forward, offering support and resources to help educate and reform business practices in the area. Michael was invited to speak at community forums and workshops, where he shared his experiences and insights on racial bias in law enforcement. His role in the incident painted him not just as a victim, but as a strong advocate for justice and equality, further solidifying his standing in the community. Meanwhile, Tom faced the immediate task of turning his apology into action. True to his word, he began implementing substantial changes within his store. He enrolled himself and his staff in diversity training programs, bringing in experts on racial sensitivity and customer service. These sessions were eye-opening for many of his employees, some of whom had been unaware of the subtle biases they held. Tom also reevaluated his store's security policies. He removed the biased measures that had unfairly targeted black shoppers, replacing them with fairer, more equitable practices. Security cameras and floor plans were adjusted to focus on actual behavior rather than baseless assumptions. Tom's efforts were met with cautious optimism from his staff and the community, many of whom were waiting to see if these changes would result in tangible improvements. The shift was gradual but noticeable. Customers who had once felt unwelcome or surveilled noticed the change in atmosphere. Staff members, now better educated on the nuances of bias, interacted with all customers with renewed respect and professionalism. These changes did not go unnoticed. Patrons began to return, and some even praised the store's new direction in online reviews and community feedback sessions. Tom's personal journey was fraught with challenges. He faced backlash for his past behaviors, including loss of longtime customers and strained relationships with peers. However, he remained committed to his path of redemption, often reflecting on the incident with Michael as a painful but necessary wake-up call. Months later, the community watched as the store hosted a public event to celebrate its new commitment to diversity and inclusion. Tom invited Michael as a guest speaker, a move that symbolized his respect and appreciation for the role Michael had played in his transformation. The event was well attended, with community members eager to support a local business taking genuine steps towards positive change. As Michael addressed the gathering, his message was clear. Change isn't just about adjusting policies or attending training. It's about understanding each other, about dismantling the prejudices that divide us, and building a community where everyone is valued. His words echoed through the crowd, a reminder of the ongoing work needed to overcome bias and discrimination. Several months had passed since the incident at Tom Reynolds' electronics store, and the seeds of change he had sown were beginning to flourish. With genuine efforts to amend his views and business practices, Tom witnessed a transformation not only within the walls of his store, but within himself. Inspired by Michael Johnson's example, He actively engaged with community leaders to foster a culture of understanding and respect in the neighborhood. To celebrate this new chapter, Tom organized a community event sponsored by his store, aimed at promoting unity and celebrating diversity. The event, carefully planned to reflect the community's varied backgrounds, included workshops, discussions, and cultural performances. It was more than a promotional activity. It was a sincere attempt to mend fences and build bridges. Michael, who had recently been promoted within the police force for his exemplary service and leadership, was invited as a special guest. His role in catalyzing the positive changes in Tom's perspective and practices was crucial, and his presence at the event symbolized the progress that had been made. Accepting the invitation, Michael viewed the event as an opportunity to support ongoing community efforts and reinforce the message of equality and justice. On the day of the event, the store was transformed into a vibrant gathering place, buzzing with the excited chatter of a diverse crowd. Tom opened the proceedings with a speech that was remarkably different from the man he had been months ago. Standing in front of his community, he openly acknowledged his past mistakes and the lessons he had learned. Today we come together not just to celebrate diversity, but to embrace our shared humanity, Tom began, his voice resonant with sincerity. Several months ago, I stood in this very store, blinded by prejudice and ignorance. But thanks to Officer Michael Johnson, who stood up with dignity and strength, I began a journey towards understanding and empathy. The crowd listened intently as Tom continued, his words reflecting deep personal growth. This event, this celebration, is a testament to what we can achieve when we look past our biases and learn from one another. I am deeply grateful to Michael for his patience and for teaching me a valuable lesson in humility and respect. As applause filled the room, Michael took the stage. His speech complemented Tom's message, focusing on the power of community and the importance of ongoing vigilance against discrimination. Change isn't just about one person, one store, or one community. It's about all of us, every day, in every interaction. We must continue to support each other, to challenge injustice, and to strive for a society where everyone is respected for who they are, not judged on the basis of prejudice. Following the speeches, the event continued with panel discussions led by community activists, educators, and local leaders, each sharing stories of overcoming adversity and building inclusive spaces. The discussions were insightful, sparking further conversations among attendees about how they could contribute to sustaining the momentum of change. As the event concluded, Tom and Michael shared a moment of quiet reflection. They shook hands, a gesture rich with symbolism, a mutual acknowledgement of the road traveled and the journey ahead. This handshake, once a simple acknowledgement of an apology, had evolved into a sign of deep mutual respect and a commitment to moving forward together. The story of Tom and Michael, from a tense confrontation to a collaborative partnership, had become a beacon of hope for the community, a vivid illustration of how openness to change and honest dialogue can bridge the deepest divides.